What did we just hear? What was that?
Getting towed out.
Yeah.
And then where's Nolan in this situation?
Well, Nolan was, the last time I saw Nolan was 3 o'clock. And Nolan was cradling a girl in his arms, Katie, Katie. And Katie, Nolan was sitting there, and the last time I saw him, I looked at Nolan, and Nolan was like shaking his head, laughing, and I was like, dude, you crazy. I was like just joking with him. And, but anyway, Nolan, that was the last time I laid eyes on him. But when we were leaving, obviously, no one is getting left at the island that came with us unless they demanded to, be there and asked, this is a very common thing at Horn Island. When you're out there, a lot of people ride out there with someone and in with somebody else all the time. I've done that 100 times. It's a very common thing, but Nolan was sitting by the boat with that Katie girl, and my buddy yelled for Nolan, get on the boat. We're leaving. The boat's having issues. And no, he didn't say that, but he was panicking. Nolan, get the F on the boat. Get on the boat. And Nolan said, no, I'm staying out here. I'm going to ride in with somebody else. And it's not uncommon to hear, but it's not like my buddy asked him one time. My buddy asked Nolan multiple times to get on the boat. Nolan, get on the boat. Get on the boat. We're leaving. If you're coming, you got to come now. And Nolan made a decision to stay out on the island. And like he said,
How many people heard that?
At least 5. Everyone that was on our boat right there, because the Palm Beach had already left. My buddy went ahead and went home on the Palm Beach, and 3 guys all the way back. And Nolan wasn't the only person to ride out there with us and in with somebody else. We had multiple people in our group that rode out with us and rode in on someone else's boat. And that, like I said, that's not an uncommon thing to do, a lot of people do that. I could name probably 50 people out there that day that ran out with somebody and ran back in with somebody else. So, it's not like it's an uncommon thing, but it's not like we just left him there, or my friends just left him there. Nolan made a decision to stay on the island after my friends asked him multiple times and told him to get on the boat, and he decided to stay.
And I heard the girl that he was with, Katie, had text somebody that she heard people yelling
correct
for Nolan to get on it. Is that true?
And I have a picture of that. She texted my buddy, and the next day everybody was panicking and everybody's texting Katie, because she was obviously seen with Nolan the whole day at the island. Katie sent a message to my buddy the next day and said, this is the last time I saw him, he's really sweet. But she also mentioned that the last time she saw Nolan was when my buddy was yelling at him to get on the boat, and she was right there to see that Nolan decided not to.
Yvonne, I want to come to you because you're his friend. You were on the island on the 4th. You were on a different boat. Do you recall seeing him at all that day?
Yes, ma'am. I did see him when I was out there on the island.
Can you tell me what you saw? Does anything seem strange to you about the difference that people are saying of how he was separated from the group?
No, ma'am. I don't think that Nolan would say, hey, bro, I'm staying with this girl on the island.
Has never been able to logically explain how they ended up so far away from the shore. Because according to him, he said at 3 o'clock, that was the last time he saw Nolan. Bart was trying to yell at him to get on the boat. His brother got into a fight, so he got his brother to come over there. That's when he saw that it was all sinking, because he said this.
There's a lot of people on, so it drags water in. And eventually, I think over time, we were out there for a couple hours. The boat just started filling up with water. So I popped the starboard side hatch, and the battery was completely underwater.
Yes, but according to Warren, he had just seen Nolan neck deep cradling a girl at the boat next to them. So how did they end up in 31 feet of water at the 4 o'clock call? There's an hour in between that. If the battery is submerged, how would they even get away from the sandbar? You can see in the background of this picture, they are far away from people. And yet this GPS is saying that you were stationary the whole time. But why? Especially because we have actual fucking proof. Right here, we have the coordinates that Wyatt's mom gave them the second time, and the cop took a picture of the GPS. Compare it to the GPS coordinates in which they were trying to get a tow from. I figured it out. I figured out the Nolan Wells timeline. I know how they messed with the GPS. I figured it all out. I figured out the lies that are based in truth. I figured it all out, and I've got proof. But stick with me because it's going to be a long video, y'all. Now, I found a 15-page Marine Patrol report that had lots of little details that prove that the boys had been lying. So I've already shown how at 1:30 in the morning, the initial Lieutenant Odom with the Jackson County Sheriff's Office said that his deputies spoke with several of the friends who traveled to the island on the vessel with Nolan. And they said that he left in the company of an unknown female and that he chose to remain on the island.
So what was the next step? Did you guys ever engage with police or?
Yeah, so the first time I talked to the police was July 7th. I talked to the lead investigator, and I told him my whole story, top to bottom. Dot every I, crossed every T. I told him everything I knew, every little detail.
Well, that's a lie now, isn't it, Warren? Because you talked to them at 1:30 in the morning that night. I mean, did you just forget to tell the cops about Katie? Because it's not like you didn't know it was her or you didn't know how to get in contact with her.
The girl that he was with, Katie, had texted somebody that she heard people yelling.
Correct.
Nolan yelling.
Yeah, and I have a picture of that. She texted my buddy, and the next day everybody was panicking. Everybody was texting Katie, because she was obviously seeing Nolan the whole day at the island. Katie sent a message to my buddy the next day and said, this last time I saw him, he's really sweet. But she also mentioned that the last time she saw Nolan was when my buddy was yelling at him to get on the boat.
But Katie says that she assumed that she went on the boat after y'all were yelling at him. And let's not forget that the last time you saw him was 3.
Well, the last time I saw Nolan was 3 o'clock. And Nolan was cradling a girl in his arms.
And yet for some reason around noon, the name of another girl who hadn't even seen Nolan in a year was given to the patrol to go interview, saying that she was with that group, not Katie. They also gave the name of a couple of other friends who they weren't able to get in contact with. And despite having a picture of a text message from Katie, funny how you didn't share that with Officer Tatum. Probably could have cleared up some stuff real quick, right? Now let's get to the data. Now, at about 1:30 on July 5th, they were doing a flight of drones based on the relation of the last known anchor position of the Atkinson vessel, which I have documented right here. 4:30, Officer Strickland contacted Jennifer Pyrone, who was Wyatt's mother, who told them that he had already spoken to officers earlier in that day, but they were happy to cooperate with any investigation. And she let this officer take a picture of the GPS. Officer Strickland observed the track line showing Pyrone's vessel location on Horn Island, then gave coordinates. I'm going to need you to remember this exact phrasing. It's going to be important later on. Now, this was the GPS coordinates from the picture that the officer took, meaning that these coordinates had to be a different one that was verbally given over the phone by Wyatt. And you'll notice they're quite different. Now, you'll notice that this incident report says the involved entities are Bart Edmington and Jerry Adkerson, not Wyatt. Even though Wyatt is 18, he should be on this report. And you could argue that they were just giving the names of the people that owned the boats, but somehow I doubt that 21-year-old Bart owns that boat. You'll notice on this report that 2 different pieces of GPS evidence were collected. So now we're going to go to the July 8th report where they came and they took those GPS coordinates from both the Adkerson boat and Bart's boat. Yellow is Bart, blue is the grandfather Jerry. You know, the same Jerry that called and canceled the sea tow as the sea tow phone call was being made. Now, mind you, this is 3 days after the police had come and spoken to the mother and gotten the GPS coordinates. Now, Bart had a germane GPS map chart plotter. Jerry's boat also contained a germane GPS map chart plotter. Now, I had to look up the difference between waypoints, tracks, and routes. So waypoints mark specific spots. Routes connect them in a planned order, and tracks record your actual path. Now, according to that GPS data, there is no movement from 11 to 4:30, but we know that that's not true. Warren has never been able to logically explain how they ended up so far away from the shore. Because according to him, he said at 3 o'clock, that was the last time he saw Nolan, Bart was trying to yell at him to get on the boat. His brother got into a fight, so he got his brother to come over there. That's when he saw that it was all sinking, because he said this.
There's a lot of people on, so it drags water in, and eventually, I think over time we were out there for a couple hours, the boat just started filling up with water. So I popped the starboard side hatch, and the battery was completely underwater.
Yes, but according to Warren, he had just seen Nolan like neck deep cradling a girl at the boat next to them. So how did they end up in 31 feet of water at the 4 o'clock call? There's an hour in between that. If the battery is submerged, how would they even get away from the sandbar? You can see in the background of this picture, they are far away from people. And yet this GPS is saying that you were stationary the whole time. But why? Especially because we have actual fucking proof right here. We have the coordinates that Wyatt's mom gave them the second time, and the cop took a picture of the GPS. Compare it to the GPS coordinates in which they were trying to get a tow from. But what if I were to tell you that not only does a waypoint need to be physically saved on this exact type of GPS, you have to intentionally say, mark this spot, or else it doesn't automatically save. It records your tracks automatically, but those are just saved coordinates. And it turns out you can actually delete tracks. It's super easy. You just go into the main menu and you delete it off of your data. So why is this GPS data, which is right here, so much further away than what the GPS says it is later? There is no data included in that GPS report that explains them going from here to here, unless someone went in and deleted those tracks. Because they probably dropped that waypoint once they anchored, which would explain why Warren said they showed up at 10:30 and the GPS says that they showed up after 11. And so then it wasn't until half an hour after the canceled tow that they dropped another waypoint. And mind you, the exact same GPS was used in both boats, and Wyatt/Jerry's boat has the tracks and routes where Bart's does not. And again, it tracks it automatically, so you have to intentionally delete those tracks. And why did they do that? Well, it turns out Jerry Atkinson just so happens to be the owner of Ocean Marine Group in Ocean Springs and Gulfport, which is literally a boat dealer. So guess who's gonna know that information? We already know Grandpa Jerry was in the mix, because the only way that he could have canceled the sea tow before it even started to head out is if Wyatt had called Jerry first and Jerry told him to call for a sea tow and then canceled it for him, which would explain why he couldn't give any descriptions of where the water was. How high was it? We know that the sea tow did not bring in the boat. In fact, Bart's mother came on Facebook and said that there are pictures from my son's boat of the boat about to be towed, which is clearly who is about ready to tow them here, as Wyatt is on the phone. I can tell you 100% that this is not a sinking boat. You can see Bart bringing them in this picture. But Bart was supposedly the one yelling at Nolan to get on the boat, remember? Why would he be yelling at Nolan to get on a boat that's sinking? Unless he was telling Nolan to get on his boat. And Warren accidentally explained what really happened with the engine. Whatever happened with Nolan happened on Bart's boat, allegedly, which is why all of Bart's information was deleted. So here's what happened. Both this one and this one confirmed that there was a fight that broke out on the beach. Started out with him, ended up with Warren's little brother. His uncle says, we gotta go. They hop on a boat and they leave. He grabs his drunk younger brother and says, we're getting out of here too. 3 o'clock. This whole caravan is trying to get the hell out of there because they're drunk and fighting. Wyatt's boat was in such a hurry that they couldn't figure out how to put the freaking trim down, which caused the motor to overheat, quickly stranded them, and Bart had to come help them. The time that Bart shows up, something has happened between him and Nolan. They're all distracted trying to fix the bilge pump because it didn't trim down. The waves were crashing over the boat and into the bilge pump, short-circuiting it. During this, some people have figured out that Nolan is gone. Other people just think that he's passed out or something, which is why Wyatt calls his grandfather to figure out what the F to do. And as the phone call is being made, more people are figuring out something's wrong with Nolan. That's why they didn't start moving again for 30 minutes. They were coming up with a plan and figuring out how to make it work. I've run out of time, but don't worry, I'm doing a follow-up to this video with more details, more information. And if you like my work, be sure to show your support in my bio. Have I found more evidence of a fourth boat? Not only have I found a lie in their timeline, but I have also discovered a deep political connection, not only to a former governor of Mississippi, but to Turning Point USA. So first off, this picture has surfaced in which it's clearly the group of boats a little bit further out in the water altogether. Now here is what is supposedly Bart's boat. We can see the Garmin on top. We can confirm this black boat from this other picture. We can see Wyatt's Triton right here, and we can confirm that by the motor. As you can see right here, has that black stripe on the white motor. Now in between the two boats is the Palm Beach. You can clearly see it labeled and it's got that stripe, right? As you can see, the stripe is there And yet there's this design right here and no Palm Beach. And you may be like, Jay, that doesn't prove that it's a different boat. Maybe we just can't see it, even though it should be right there according to this picture. But if you look in this video, you can see that there is a black propeller right there. See black propeller, and you can very clearly see the Palm Beach right there on the side. And if you look really carefully in this photo, you can see right there a black propeller. There's another boat on the other side of these three boats. And given the lack of the name on the boat and the black propeller, I'm going to assume the Palm Beach is on the other side, which means there's 4 boats right here. Then I rewatched Warren's interview.
I woke up at my buddy's house, and we went to McDonald's, got food. No one was not with me, and I went and got breakfast. I had my buddy's boat hooked up to my truck, and well, first I ran to my house, then I went to McDonald's and came back, and the boat was already hooked up to my truck. My buddy Wyatt and I went, and with my buddies, and we went, filled the top of the boat off, loaded it down with ice, and just got everything ready. Then Wyatt went and put his smaller boat in the water, which is the Palm Beach. He's an 18-foot Palm Beach, and I drove the boat from Fort Bayou Boat Launch to my buddy's grandparents' house, and that's where we all planned to meet up that day.
So Wyatt had his buddy's boat already hooked up to the back of his truck. He said he and Wyatt and his other buddy went and got ice and filled up the boats. And Wyatt went and put the Palm Beach, his smaller boat, into the water. And we know that there was a second boat, the Triton, that was driven by Wyatt. Wyatt had 2 boats in the water. Who was driving his other boat?
Nolan was on Wyatt Pyron's 22 Triton. On the way out, I went with my buddy Bart because we had a lot of friends from college coming down, and I called Bart that morning. I was like, "Hey man, can you take your boat out?" And he was like, "Yeah, well, my dad's decided not to go, and I'll take the boat, and I'll take you and your friends." Of course, I mean, he's a buddy of mine. And so Bart pulled up at the dock, and I mean, I rode out there with Bart and a lot of the girls that go to college with my friends and I, and Nolan rode out on the Triton, and then we had a Palm Beach, 18 Palm Beach. There was 4 guys on that. There was like 8 people on the Triton, and then there was 8 or 9 people on the Triton, and then there was the rest of the group, which was probably ranged from maybe 10 to 15 or 16 people.
Now wait a minute. So Warren already had a boat hooked up when he woke up that morning. I'm assuming that had to be the Triton that was hooked up, right? Then he said that Wyatt went and put his smaller boat, the Palm Beach, into the water. Then Warren said that he was the one who drove the Palm Beach to their friend's dock. Assuming that Wyatt drove the Triton to the dock and Bart drove his own boat to that dock, who drove the Palm Beach out to the water then? Because he said that he got a ride in with Bart, even though at one point during the interview he said all of his stuff was on the Palm Beach. So it sounds to me like Warren was the one driving the Palm Beach. I'm also like, what parent would let their kid, who's obviously going off to party, take 2 of their boats and let their drunk friends drive? Like, it isn't making sense to me. I mean, maybe these parents are just shitty parents and irresponsible. Then he also said that he contacted Bart that morning to see if he could come, and Bart was like, yeah, I can give all your friends a ride, blah, blah, blah. According to him, there were 10-ish people, 15 people on that boat. So where were those people originally supposed to ride in on? They'd been planning it for weeks. They were excited about it. Why did Bart have to suddenly step in and take all these people? And remember, Bart said that his dad had canceled going out on the boat that day, so he could do it. Something's not adding up here. I think there was an adult somewhere in this mix. It would also explain how they all thought quickly on their feet with the sea tow. I wouldn't be surprised if an adult didn't come out there and just go off with other adults that were also on Horn Island and let the kids hang out with the boat. Here's where things are going to get interesting, folks. There are more GPS coordinates in the report than what we have seen publicly. I'm going to play you a clip from the interview, but remember, at 5:30 is when they started picking up regular speed, all right? It's right here, 525, speed miles, 30 to 35 knots. So here we go.
Planed off, and you have water in the boat, and you're hauling, we're going pretty fast. We're going probably 40, 42 miles an hour. And so all that excess water that was built up in the boat is coming out of the boat. So, I mean, that's what we had to do. So we ran into Fort Bayou, and we didn't just run straight to my buddy's grandparents' house. We ran into Fort Bayou. A couple of us jumped in the water, and Wyatt, the whole reason for the stop was so Wyatt could hop in and put the plug back in the boat. So then after that, we went and docked it, and I went back to my buddy's house, and we ate and napped for a little bit. It was a long day at the islands.
Now you heard him. He said that they took off going 40 miles an hour and they didn't go to his buddy's grandparents' house, but they went to Fort Bayou to go do a plug thing. Except right here, 5:44, vessel arrives at El Camino Road. 8 minutes later, then it departs from El Camino Road and headed east into Fort Bayou. So right there we have a lie. The boat did stop before going into Fort Bayou. 6 minutes later, it comes back to El Camino Road, and the vessel departed El Camino Road half an hour later, headed southwest to St. Martin Bayou, and then turned southeast into Biloxi Bay Bridge. Then they went back to the Bayou boat launch. Then the boat was taken to Cardinal Lane, which was Wyatt's residence. Now, because I am an absolute genius, I was able to find it. This was where they left and where they came back that day, then came back several times. Now, first off, why aren't we seeing footage of them returning that day? We know that Nolan was with them when they left, so why do they have the security cams from that morning, but not that night? Whose grandparents live there? Jax Patalo, whose family owns a pharmacy. It goes back deeper than that because George Patalo Sr., which is Jax's great-grandfather who is deceased, as it turns out, his great-grandfather was appointed and served on the staff of Mississippi Governor Cliff Finch. As you can see, I've confirmed Jax's relation to him. And as it turns out, Cliff Finch, well, he was in the Mississippi House of Representatives from 1960 to 1964 and supported racial segregation and backed the racist governor, to preserve segregation in the state. The federal grand jury conducted a 3-year-long investigation into his administration and several state agencies, and they were all accused of corruption and mismanagement. Finch was never found guilty himself, but some of his aides and appointees were indicted. And those sort of political connections seem to trickle down through the generations, so now we know why the governor got involved. And I started looking into the lawyer that's handling the defamation case from the Bart family. So from 2015 to 2018, he was state director of Americans for Prosperity. Then in 2018 to 2020, he was vice president of Stand Together while being vice president of Americans for Prosperity. Stand Together is a Charles Koch nonprofit, and Americans for Prosperity is a libertarian conservative political advocacy group affiliated with Charles Koch and David Koch. And if you don't know who the Koch brothers are, they're fucking evil. Guess who's one of the major funders for Turning Point USA? Major donors for the Koch brothers also are primary financial pillars for Turning Point USA, specifically their campus operations. And guess who used to serve as the director of urban engagement? This is now my 3rd time making this video because they keep taking it down because they don't want you to see what I have found. Katie has dry snitched, y'all. Here we see Katie's Snapchat where she's wearing a teal swimsuit and she's with a girl in a blue and white striped swimsuit. On this video of the 3 boats, you're gonna see a girl in a blue and white striped swimsuit right here on Bart's boat, and right next to her with the same long wet hair is a girl in a teal swimsuit on Bart's boat. Make sure you have your brightness turned all the way up because here we have Katie in a teal swimsuit and look at her head. She is wearing a white hat. Oh look, the video of the boat getting towed. Teal swimsuit, white hat. And that's not all, folks. Again, turn your brightness all the way up because right here we've got somebody wearing red trunks. Oh, and look what we have here. Red trunks. And here's those same red trunks on the shore right after the fight with Tristan. Katie is claiming that she allegedly caught a ride home with somebody named Marty McGrath. It just so happens that a Marty McGrath is the co-owner of the Biloxi Bay RV Resort and Marina in St. Martin. Here it is, and my, that is a massive dock way out in the water. And would you look at that? It's right next to the grandparents' house. Now, in that report with the GPS coordinates, didn't they say that they went southwest towards St. Martin Bayou? Yeah, that's right, it did. And it also took them 45 minutes to get to that boat ramp over there that only takes about 6 minutes on land. Like I said, they are trying to take down my page. Make sure you are following my backup here. But Katie, I want to say one thing to you. You're young, and I know you don't realize this yet, but these are not your friends. Be a hero. Do what's right.
That he was hanging out with. I saw a text message from her alluding to the fact that she never saw him get on that boat at all. They could have been saying don't die or is it dead, referring to the bilge pump. Somebody would have seen something if there was a dramatic commotion like this occurring on that boat.
I hope Nolan Wells died by accident. I'm not shutting down our crime stories investigation until I know.
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can you all please come? We have a membership. Hey, up! Shut the f*** up! What'd you say?
You know, if that sound is real, there's no getting away from that. And all this business about there's no connection, well, I listened to a good 40 seconds of SETO, S-E-A, second word T-O-W, on hold, listened to their music. There was plenty good connection, but before I can even get to the death threats of blood, so much blood everywhere, and don't step outside, and more, before I can even get to the grand jury, before I can get to the autopsy that's being kept hidden from us, I want you to meet someone very important, critical to this investigation. Her name, Janetta Brantley. Miss Brantley is the audio engineer who enhanced the 911 call, the SETO call, in the Nolan Wells case. So everybody claiming some ding-dong on YouTube did it, or somebody on Insta or TikTok did it, no. She did it. I've spoken to her. I've read her statement. I want you to judge her credibility. Credibility is normally the sole province of a jury, and tonight you serve in that function. Miss Brantley, I'm sure that you're getting all sorts of abuse, threats, and so forth. It's a cacophony that seemingly won't cease. That said, thank you for being with us tonight. Explain to me where you got the audio, how you got the audio, and what, if anything, you did to enhance the audio.
First and foremost, I basically downloaded it off of YouTube from WLOX News's YouTube site. And when I downloaded it, I ripped it off of YouTube. That's the terminology that we use when we take something off of YouTube. But when I ripped it off of YouTube, Pause. And I pulled it in.
Pause, please. Objection. Miss Brantley, isn't it true that the audio you got was taken directly by XLO from MDMR, correct? The Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Okay, please continue, Miss Brantley.
So when I downloaded it from YouTube, I pulled it into my DAW, which is Logic Pro X. That's my DAW of choice. And when I first listened to it, I realized that it was like a dual mono recording, which most, most phone services or operators utilize when they're recording conversations. And so it was already split between the caller, the dispatch, and the callers in the background. And so that's what made it easy for me to isolate it without having to do much to it. So that isolation, when I separated the left channel from the right channel, that just made me be able to really focus on everything that was on the call. And what I was hearing was I honestly could not believe what I was hearing.
Miss Janetta Brantley, isn't it true this is the same audio that was released by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources?
Yes, that is absolutely correct.
Let's listen to it one more time.
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can you all please come? We have a membership. Hey, up! Shut the f*** up! What'd you say? It's coming up. We're just sinking. I don't know. We're going down now. I don't know the phone number. It's either. I think it's. Try that. Everybody was on this phone. I know we have a membership, guaranteed. I don't have the tag on here. It got ripped off. What? No, we do not need that. Let me go look. Where is this? Hey, jump in and pull the plug while you're going.
Take it out of gear. Take it out of gear.
Hello.
Take it out of gear.
Okay, what's going on? What's up? Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can y'all please come? We have a membership. Hello! Let's go! Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can y'all please come? We have a membership. Hello! Let's go!
David Bart. David Bart. David Bart.
Back to Janetta Brantley joining us tonight, and she shows herself in that video showing what she is doing. What does adding EQ mean, Ms. Brantley?
Adding EQ is basically selecting a certain frequency of the actual sound and either deleting or removing a certain noise, something that's problematic to the ear, deleting that or boosting that. That's literally all EQing is.
What was your process, Janetta? Because I was sitting researching. It was early in the morning, like 5:45 a.m. several days ago, and I was researching the Nolan Wells case, and I saw the transcript as it was being played. And my husband was also up. He said, "What's wrong?" I'm like, if this is real, this changes everything. It changes everything. Because up until that point, it seemed as if Nolan's death could very well have been an accident. If this is real, it changes everything. It's seismic. What was your reaction when you heard these words, Janetta Brantley?
I think at my core, I was in disbelief. I wasn't cleaning it or enhancing it to specifically look for or identify a crime or even point the fingers at anybody. I believe I wanted it to be an accident. I think a lot of us wanted it to be an accident. So when I heard those things, when I heard, "Damn it, Bart," that name stood out to me because I hadn't even heard that name before. As I was listening to certain things that stood out to me, I was in disbelief because, again, I'm just an audio engineer. I'm not an investigator, detective, or anything like that. So when I heard a name that I wasn't familiar with, it stood out to me, and that alone made me want to hear what was immediately said after "Damn it, Bart." And so that's why in that process where "Damn it, Bart" came in loud and clear to me, I decided to go over to the next part to hear what the rest of that statement was, which is where you saw me actually create a loop over that part, split that part, and then add a gain, which the gain is boosting the volume overall. And that's pretty much what you saw me do in that actual video. And so to hear, "Damn it, Bart, Nolan's really dead now," that I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it.
My reaction too, Janetta, because when I first heard it, I thought this has got to be doctored. This can't be real. Don't move. Straight out to veteran trial lawyer Franz Borghardt, a veteran trial lawyer joining us out of the Baton Rouge jurisdiction at Borghardt's law firm. Franz, take off your defense hat just one moment. I have introduced wiretaps many times at trials, which are very hard to get, by the way. And I've never had one that I believed was doctored at the time because they were taken by law enforcement. This is from a completely independent source with no dog in the fight, no skin in the game. It's from dispatch at CETO. And if this is real, this blows the case wide up. Now, you saw Janetta Brantley. You've heard her. I have no reason to disbelieve anything she's saying.
So if I'm prosecuting this, I'm worried that I need a witness in 2026 to exclude the possibility that it's either AI generated or doctored, just like you suggested. And I think that she's very credible, but I think we need to go one step further. The other concern I have, Nancy, is if the independent autopsy is showing inconclusive death results, now I really want to see the other autopsy to see, is there trauma to the body? Is there something that happened? These are the concerns I would have as a prosecutor.
Before we talk about obstructions such as allegedly lying or covering something up, you've already mentioned two distinct lines of inquiry. One is that the audio that Janetta Brantley enhanced innocently, I believe, had been already AI or doctored. Okay, let's follow that through to its logical conclusion. You just throw that out there like a stink bomb at the circle. You know what a circle meeting is, right? In the United Methodist Church, all the ladies have circle meetings. Okay. To suggest this was doctored before Janetta got it means it had to have been doctored or AI created by who? The Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. No, don't just go, that doesn't work in court, Burkhartz. You can't just throw, that's like the sod defense. Some other dude did it. What dude? What are you talking about? So you're saying AI doctored by who? If it's not Janetta, then who? She got it. The same sound that was released by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. What? You think they doctored it?
There is nothing normal about this case. And if the
That's not what I asked you. I'm asking you to explain your premise, and you're not doing it.
I said if I were a prosecutor, I would want to be able to establish with expert testimony that what we are listening to is real. And I would want a witness, because I'm telling you, with this case, with as viral as it's been, I'm not disagreeing that it's real. I'm saying I would want to be able to bolster that very credible woman's testimony, and she is very credible. I have no doubt that what we're listening to and what she did is credible. The issue is I don't know if she can go the distance to say,
okay,
right,
got it. She cannot testify as to whether MDMR had enhanced it or doctored it before it was released. But see, the problem is you would have to ask someone to believe a clerk or an official at the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources doctored this before they released it, to the extent that nobody could understand it until they enhanced it. That's a hell of a doctor job. Okay, so you did that. Then you got into the medical examiner findings. Okay, what was your theory on that? Very quickly.
If he's dead on the boat, how did he die? It should be conclusive. It shouldn't be inconclusive.
Zip. Joining us right now, Joseph Scott Morgan, renowned death investigator, professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University, with a premier criminal pro department and building, author of Blood Beneath My Feet, star of a hit series, Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan, and it goes on. Significant, over 10,000 death scenes under his belt. Joe Scott, follow up. I'm not arguing in Burkhartz. Let's learn, if we can, from what he's saying. Jump.
Yeah, so whatever has been the causal factors here has got to marry up with what they were seeing at the scene, and perhaps the audio does fall into this. These statements. And I think that probably from a medical legal perspective, that is the coroner and the medical examiner are going to want to be able to fully appreciate what is being said here from a timeline. This is absent the police's investigation. They're going to try to rule in or rule out what they're seeing presenting on Nolan's remains when they finally did receive them at the state medical examiner's office and that examination began. And this is going to be critical and key, because the causal effects here are going to be critical. We go back to these changes that the second autopsy referred to on the back of the head. Now, the doctor was not able to, at that point in time, even though he did do a thorough, what's referred to as a layered dissection here, he could not establish the causal effects here because the injury or the insult that you see there, this presentation, is compromised by decomposition. So what did the state medical examiner see? My problem is here, Nancy, how was the body treated before or after the first autopsy and the body is transported up to DC? I have questions about this because they're talking about to the degree with which the body was decomposed. The doctor up in DC is seeing significant decomposition. We don't know what they saw in Mississippi, but I do know that you're only talking about and I'm ballparking here, please give me some grace, maybe 48 hours tops. Before the medical legal authorities have seen the body. So how far degraded is the body to compromise any of this? And this evidence is going to have to be borne out, not just with the physical findings that you see with the unaided eye, but also whatever's going on toxicologically.
I want you to take a careful look at this video we have obtained. Let's see it. Look how tightly everyone is packed in. There were hundreds of people out on Horn Island on July the 4th. What, nobody saw what happened to Nolan Wells? They all just left with him standing there stranded, waving his arms like Gilligan? That did not happen. Now that you're seeing this, what is an innocent explanation? I'm trying to figure that out. Joining me, and I'll circle back to you, Joe Scott, because I got a lot of questions regarding the way he could have died innocently and been left behind, and that sound being true. The sound that Janetta Brantley enhanced. Is there any innocent explanation? Is there a way? As my favorite judge often said, Luther Alverson, it is your duty to make all witnesses speak the truth and impugn perjury to no one. Is there a way that can be done? I don't know that it can. It seems to me that someone is lying. But who? Joining me now, Teslin Figaro, social justice, political commentator, host of the Teslin Figaro podcast. Ms. Figaro, thank you for being with us. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, that's what the family is saying. They don't believe he died by accident. That's the point. That's the reason why Nolan Wells' mom is saying, I don't believe this. I don't believe he died by accident before we had the audio. The audio simply confirms that there are additional questions that needs to be asked. It wasn't just one thing they said in the audio. They said Nolan repeatedly in the audio. They said check his chest in the audio. They said, is he dead in the audio? And also notice this, Nancy. Did you notice that the operator also said, is anybody breathing? Who says that? What operator says who all is breathing on the boat? So is this all the audio, Nancy? Is there more audio? That's my question.
I want to look specifically, Teslin, at what was said. At one point, we think, you killed him? He's already dead. He's already dead? Is he dead? Yeah. Nolan, OMG, wake up. And as Janetta stated, then she hears a completely different name, Bart. Now, we also hear, and I'm very curious, the phrase no. Teslin Figaro, was that a nickname of Nolan Wells?
I cannot confirm if that's a nickname of his or not. But what I do know is we heard Nolan. What I do know is we heard check his chest. What I do know is that we said, is he dead? What we do know is we heard screams. There's folks out there suggesting that perhaps they were talking to a seagull or perhaps talking to some random bird that was flying around that's called No. There were folks out there that suggested, well, maybe they were talking about the boat. Come on, we got to knock this off, Nancy. We heard what we heard. And so we were to put this before a jury.
Also, we hear, damn it, Bart, No-No's really dead. Damn it, Bart, No-No's really dead. Repeating it over and over and over. According to reports, his nickname, one of them, is No-No. Back to Teslin Figaro. What is Nolan's mother's theory about what happened in light of these tapes?
Before we even had the tapes, her theory is, I told my son, I've raised my son just like I've raised my 19-year-old the same way, Nancy, like I'm sure you raise your children. Come back with the people you went with. Her theory has always been that he is a fantastic swimmer, that he is an athlete. Her theory has always been that he did not drown. Her theory has always been that there's something wrong with this picture. Her theory has always been that the fact that, he left his phone and left his keys. Her theory has also always been that he did not just go off with some random stranger and say, guys, don't worry about it, just leave me on an island. Her theory is the same thing before this audio. This audio only confirms what this mother already knew.
Hi guys, Nancy Grace here. If you are a homeowner, you've probably thought, should I call American Financing to refinance and pay off this debt? But you don't because of your low mortgage rate. That low rate, it's not saving you if you're drowning in credit card interest. People are calling American Financing, and American Financing is saving customers an average of $800. That's not in all, that's a month, by using their equity to pay off the credit card debt. Using their home equity to pay off credit card debt. No upfront fees. It costs you nothing to find out what you could be saving. And if you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. American Financing, 866-888-0344. Repeat, 866-888-0344. Or just go online to americanfinancing.net/Nancy. Disclaimer, NMLS 182334, NMLSconsumeraccess.org, APR for rates in the 5S start at 6.327% for well-qualified borrowers. Call 866-888-0344 for details about credit costs and terms. Go to http:// www.americanfinancing.net/Nancy. Average savings are based on borrowers who save over $199.99. And good luck. Joining me now, Susan Hendricks, investigative journalist, author of Down the Hill, My Descent into the Double Murder in Delphi, who has been on this case from the beginning. Susan Hendricks, we all know that everyone in our country is innocent until proven guilty. And regardless of how you or I or anybody else feels, that includes the young men on the boat with Nolan Wells. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of questions that have to be answered. Is this sound real? Has it been enhanced? Who enhanced it? Was it AI or doctored before Janetta Brantley pumped it up so we can hear it? I want you to hear another version.
You can see that I have the CTO channel completely muted, so we're only listening to the callers. Then I go through and simply raise the volume of all of the chatter we hear at the beginning of the call.
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can y'all please come? We have a membership. Hey, up! Shut the f*** up! Damn it, Bart.
Susan, that was enhanced by my producer, Sydney. I know her like that. I asked her, enhance it the best you can. She, again, has no interest in the outcome of this case. She pulls up, quote, want me to cover him up? I mean, Susan, weigh in.
I was listening to the enhanced version, both of them now, not doctored, by the way. There's a big difference there. Have you ever heard, Nancy, on Instagram where you listen to two things and your mind goes to what you're thinking of, like green car or moon boat? What are we really hearing? I believe that something nefarious did happen. Where I think the answers will be, again, this is my opinion, but I believe something happened there and we're not hearing the full story. And you pointing out, Nancy, how crowded that area was. So let's say what people are claiming, that it was an accidental drowning. No one saw. Look here at the crowd. Nobody saw what happened. And all of us have our phones on us all the time. No one recorded this. I think the answers are in the timeline and also the autopsy, when we will hear answers there.
You're seeing video from the Officer Tatum show, and I don't know what they were trying to show with it, but how can someone be dead and floating in the water and nobody notice? Which leads me to, Susan Hendricks, the fact that we have learned tonight that the state's autopsy is complete, but it's being kept secret.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Being held for the grand jury to look into that. And the fact, as you brought up, Nancy, earlier, that part of his throat was missing, will that be key? There's so many questions around this, but right, it's a public record, but we're not hearing about it. I guess they're waiting for the grand jury to show them that first.
Joe Scott Morgan, death investigator. I've never known an autopsy report not to be a public record unless they're claiming ongoing investigation.
Yeah.
Now, in the D4VD David Anthony Burt case, the LAPD demanded the medical examiner keep it secret because the medical examiner's office allegedly was leaking information, possibly for money. Don't know that yet, but I will. How common is that the medical examiner is ordered not to release the autopsy? Why is the autopsy being kept secret?
Because it's continued investigation. They're going to get a grand jury with this. I can tell you that. I'll bet you dollars to donuts if that's the case. We see it with, we saw it with Idaho 4, right? We didn't have it there. We don't have it with Charlie Kirk. You know, that's an ongoing event. This is being investigated. And, you know, the point of contact here is an interesting situation here because you have the state medical examiner, but you also have a county coroner. The state medical examiner provides a service to the county coroner. The coroner is an elected official. He does not do these autopsies. And so the coroner is going to be the gatekeeper relative to any kind of document. But with that said, under state statute, the DA, the prosecutor, they can say, look, you're going to hold off on releasing this report. So it's being held at this point in time. Now, the reports that we're hearing are saying that it is complete. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you have a complete autopsy report, that means they've got tox, they've probably got histology, which is going to be the tissue studies, And they actually have the anatomical autopsy report that has been completed. That's what I think it was ABC that was reporting that. I can't validate that, but that's what is being leaked out at this point in time. So they have this report. I think the question is, and this goes back to you, my friend, is that if this is going to be a grand jury thing, when is it going? And when is the medical examiner going to be called and summoned to speak to this? That's what everybody's going to be hanging on, in my opinion.
Hold on. Joe Scott, you mentioned the tox report. That's a blood panel done. Was he drinking? Was he using drugs? A lot has been made.
Or had he been given something?
Witnesses stating Nolan was drunk. Okay. Does that really change anything? Does that change anything unless he died of acute alcohol poisoning? Because I guarantee you ain't anybody on that boat that's afraid of a cocktail. Okay? So if he was drinking, what difference does that make in whether he was killed or whether he died of an accident, Joe Scott?
Well, listen, Nancy, I know you're a teetotaler, but let me tell you something. The drunker you get, the more alcohol you take on board, it lessens your ability to defend yourself. It lessens your ability to make good decisions. And so we see this played out all the time in the medical legal world. And that's going to be the measure here, I think, relative to tox. Everybody wants to see the toxicology because that's going to give us an idea chemically what is in this young man's system. Was he able to do for himself at that point in time? And that's another problem that arises here.
It's a double-edged sword, Joe Scott. You can argue rightly. He was drunk and could not defend himself against an attack. Right. You could also argue he was drunk and hit his head, and then they go, oh, my stars, he's dead. Yep. But wouldn't that have shown up in the autopsy if he died by a blow to the head, be it accidental or nefarious? Wouldn't that have shown up?
And keep in mind the second physician that did the autopsy, who, by the way, is highly respected, the former chief medical examiner for D.C., that was retained by the family. He didn't see any evidence of fractures. All right. Now, that doesn't mean that there wasn't a concussive event. I'm talking about being hit in the head, and you can have stuff that's contained within the cranial vault that might not be presenting. But again, back to what I said earlier, I find it very interesting that this doctor is commenting on the state of the decomposition when he sees the body, and that's problematic. It's very problematic when you're trying to make an assessment. You're already absent the organs of the neck. You're absent intact lungs. And, because the specter of drowning is on the table as well. So if you want to make a thorough scientific assessment, he's kind of handcuffed, isn't he, at this point? And again, going back to this idea, how long did it take them to get his body to D.C., and why was it in such a state of decomposition when it arrived?
Hi guys, Nancy Grace here. Please join us on Crime Stories and stream it first on Fox 1. When breaking crime news develops, we investigate it and bring it to you. Bombshell updates, answers to unanswered questions from cases making the headlines and cases you may never have heard of until Crime Stories. We go inside investigations with exclusive interviews, crime victims, families seeking justice, investigators, experts, and sources from within the case itself. Stay on top of the nation's biggest trials with us, including gavel-to-gavel coverage with real-time analysis. Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. Stream it first on Fox 1. I hope to see you there, and thank you, friend. Franz Borghardt joining us, veteran trial lawyer out of the Baton Rouge jurisdiction. Speaking of toxicology results, number one, they don't take that long unless you want them to. Number two, there is doubt. If he died by accident, having consumed a lot of alcohol, was there a cover-up? Or did he die from a nefarious act? So the alcohol intake could cut either way, Franz.
I think you're spot on. I think that the reasonable doubt if someone gets arrested and accused of this crime is going to be, if the toxicology shows a high BAC in the absence of anything else, what you yourself said, could it have been foul play where he couldn't defend himself, or foul play in so much as he got injured because he was quote unquote drunk? That remains to be seen. But I don't discount the fact.
Put him up, please. Let me see, Workhart.
I don't.
You're saying foul play, but it could have been something as simple as horsing around on the boat and him hitting his head. It could be somebody whacking him in the head. It could be finding him in the water face down. And this mark on the back of his head is some type of fluid disbursement, which I don't believe, because it was nowhere else on the body except right there. And if your blood is going to sink to the lowest level upon death, it would be all over the body, but we're not seeing that. So why is just the occipital have the deep red markings? So many questions. And let me stress, before you bother sending me another death threat, we don't know the answers. These boys, these young men on that boat could be completely innocent. But when I listen to this sound, there are a lot of questions. Back to Teslin Figaro, who is joining us. She's the host of the Teslin Figaro podcast. She is a social justice and political commentator. Have you noticed that people are making a lot of the fact that Nolan was, quote, drunk? A, how do they know that? And B, does it make a difference?
Yeah, well, I've absolutely noticed it, that he was allegedly, they're saying he was drunk, and it doesn't make a difference. And let me ask you this, Nancy. If he was drunk with other teenage kids, he certainly wasn't drunk by himself. So if he was drunk, why was he the only drunk one that ended up dead? Secondly, if this was an accident, let's say he just got so drunk and just passed out, why didn't anybody report it? So even if it was an accident, even if he got drunk, which I don't believe, by the way, even if all those things happened, why did his so-called friends not report it? That's the part that we're missing. So where's the answer to that, Nancy? He just went and just said, I'm just going to be drunk and just go in the middle of the ocean and just die with hundreds and hundreds of people who are around, who are watching. Nobody saw anything happen. His friends didn't see anything happen. And again, I go back to this tape. I will not sit up here and pretend that I did not hear what was on that tape. And I ask again, even the operator said, who is breathing on the boat? Don't you think that's strange, Nancy? Who's breathing
yes,
on the boat?
when I first heard that, Tesla, I thought, I've never heard a dispatch say, who's breathing? What? Did she hear all that in the background and do nothing? Or did she hear it and say something and release it? We don't know, man. We got to paper everybody with subpoenas to get to the bottom of this. But I want to go to George Olivo and everybody on the panel. You're experts in your own right. Please tell me if you want to jump in. Please, I'm not clairvoyant. To George Olivo joining us. He's the former FBI special agent and polygraph examiner at georgeolivo.com. Okay, George, listen to what Officer Tatum told me. Back to Officer Tatum, star of The Officer Tatum on YouTube. Have the friends taken polygraphs?
Well, from my understanding, all but I believe one took a polygraph, and from what was told to me, that they all passed. And all of the ones that took a polygraph took one without a lawyer. And they cooperated with law enforcement. So from my understanding, everybody took a polygraph test. Why do you say that's
from what you understand? Did they tell you they took a poly and passed?
Yes, ma'am. They told me that they did it. I wasn't there. So that's what I'm saying from my understanding. They told me that all the boys except one, which is Warren, I believe, took a polygraph test. All of them did not have lawyers and did it and cooperated with police. Warren also cooperated with police. I just believe he didn't take a lie detector test, but Warren is the young man that I interviewed. So according to what they told me, they all took a lie detector test and passed. And it's an equivalent of a lie detector test. It's not a traditional lie detector test, but it's the same theology of trying to get to if a person is lying. I don't know the name of it. It's an equivalent of a lie detector test. It's a different methodology. I don't believe it was a polygraph test. I believe they they took other stressors in order to analyze if
So
the
then
people were
the
telling the
answer
truth or
to
not.
did they take a polygraph would be no. He's charming. He's well spoken. But that was no. That was a no. They did not take a polygraph test, and not all of them took the, as he is calling it, the equivalent. Okay, George Olivo, in my experience as a trial lawyer, there is no equivalent for a polygraph. Tell me the various bodily indicators a polygraph measures.
So polygraph does have very specific markers, and we're looking for physiological changes in baseline or truth signature. So we're looking at things like respiration, heart rate, electrodermal activity, which most people interpret as sweat gland activity. We're looking at peripheral movements to try and determine if someone's trying to cheat on the test. So it's quite extensive. And I think what the Officer Tatum was probably referring to, whether he'd realized it or not, was the voice stress analyzer. Seems like, I think he used that word one time, some kind of stressor test. It's probably that they might have taken.
Hi guys, American homeowners. The FBI has been warning about a type of real estate fraud called title theft, and your equity is the target. With just a forged signature, your ownership can be transferred out of your name, and without protection in place, you're left with an emotional and financial nightmare. That is why we partner with Home Title Lock, so you can find out today if you're already a victim and protect yourself. Use promo code Nancy at HometitleLock.com to get a free title history report, plus a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring, urgent alerts, and if you're a victim of fraud, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. Don't be a victim. Protect your home equity today. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code Nancy, or just use the link below. And good luck. I'm speaking to an expert, former FBI Special Agent Polygrapher, George Olivo. As I recall, just off the top of my head, a polygraph measures things you really cannot control unless you can have studied and practiced beating a poly. Involuntary physical stress responses, blood pressure, heart rate, breathing rate, whether you're sweating. Tubes around your chest and abdomen track your breathing, and even not just how fast you're breathing, but the depth of your breathing. Does your breathing become shallow? Do you have to pause and take deep breaths to calm yourself down? A traditional poly, measures cardiovascular activity. There's a blood pressure cuff on your arm, and it measures your pulse and your blood pressure fluctuation. It also measures what's called electrodermal activity. What is that? I've had to explain it a million times to jurors. Sensors attached to the fingers measure your sweat gland activity and even your skin electrical conductivity. The examiner then asks neutral questions like, is your name George Olivo? Are you from Cincinnati, Ohio? Are you from LA, California? Are you a polygrapher? Were you with the FBI? Were you there when Nolan Wells died? That's how that would work. You would lay a foundation of non-disturbing questions, baseline questions they're called, to get the person that's being subjected to a poly to get their baseline heart rate, their blood pressure, and so forth. Then when you hit them with a question regarding the case, you see if there's any change in that. Okay, I know I'm speaking as a layperson, George Olivo, but those are some of the things a polygraph measures.
You nailed it. Yeah, that's right, Nancy. And let me just add that the correlation between deception and physiology is nothing new. It goes back 4,000 years. Back in China, when the emperor was questioning one of his subjects, he would have a doctor standing by to listen to the heart rate, to determine if the person was telling the truth or not. And we've been studying it ever since.
What is the test that Officer Tatum is talking about? To what is he referring?
I think, and he was kind of cryptic, maybe intentionally or unintentionally, maybe he didn't really know, but it sounded like he was referring to a voice stress analyzer. Those are these machines that detect microstressors electronically in the voice. The research is very weak on that and that type of technology. I guess it's better than nothing, but the bottom line is, and I'm speaking as a polygraph examiner, and I'm saying this, no diagnostic tool, and you know this obviously, should ever be used as a final verdict. I mean, it is just one piece of the truth puzzle. But obviously, if you had a choice between a voice stress analyzer and a polygraph, there's really no comparison. A polygraph is going to be way more preferable.
Well, I mean, even polygraphs are not allowed in a criminal trial unless both parties stipulate they will be allowed to up front before the poly's even taken. They are allowed in civil trials. And isn't it true, Georgia Levo, you're the former FBI polygrapher, isn't it true the questions matter? They're critical. Because if you
Absolutely.
throw opening questions like, did you do anything wrong? Or what happened that day? You can't ask questions like that. You really have to ask yes/no questions. Then they can expound upon it. Your questions must be very specific. Isn't that true?
100%. Yeah. Test question construction is something that is going to, a lot of things are going to make or break a test, but test question construction is key. And if something is, let's say, there's a missing child, a missing person, and you ask someone of interest, are you responsible for their disappearance? Well, that's a terrible question because, they may feel morally responsible. If only I had been more careful, they feel guilty. And so you're asking the wrong question there. So you really have to get with investigators. Or you could have
asked the perp that grabs the kid off the street, are you responsible for the disappearance? And they go, no, because in their mind, it's the parents' fault because the child was out on the street. Hadn't have anything to do with me. I just gave him a ride before I killed him. That said, you can't leave anything open to interpretation, just like you and I are describing. So when I would agree to a polygraph, I never stipulated it would come into court, ever. But when I would agree to a polygraph as an investigative tool, I would take part in selecting the questions and creating the questions. Because frankly, let's just be honest, George. A voice stress test where the prosecutor or the investigator is not in charge of the questions ain't worth a hill of beans, technical legal jargon. That means nothing to me.
I'd agree with you there.
Let me put it more clearly. Voice stress test, my rear end. That ain't coming into court. In fact, I wouldn't even pay any attention to it. Now, you give me a polygraph where I help fabricate the questions? Maybe. I want to know who is the polygrapher. Is he somebody the defense hires all the time so they're beholden to the defense? No. I want somebody like Alivo that did it with the FBI. So telling me these boys, as they call them, they're young men, took, first it was a poly, then I find out it's a voice stress test, took a test and they passed. Oh, except one of them didn't take it. That means nothing. Put them on a poly with questions approved by the state. Then I'll pay attention. Right now, it's really not worth the salt that goes in my bread. You know what? If I wanted someone to pass one of these lie detector tests, I'd go with a voice test like these young men took. I wouldn't let them take a polygraph. Susan Hendricks joining us, investigative journalist and reporter. Death threats, including one that says blood will be everywhere. What was that?
That was from a man out of Sacramento, now arrested and threatening the judge, who is the stepmother of Warren. And talk about frightening, saying a lot of blood. There'll be a lot of blood like there was on the boat, but yours will be much faster.
The perp is Joseph Alfredo Vasquez Dumars, arrested Thursday on charges of interstate transmission of threatening communication. Now, these are federal documents. What did he threaten one of the young men's mom with, Susan?
The threats were against Warren, one of the boys on the boat, his stepmother, who is a judge. And it was graphic. It was brutal, saying there will be blood everywhere, threatening her life. Talking about on the boat, saying
it really does. It says that he is sending a bomb to her office that will, quote, blow you away when you see it. Once that package is open, the timer will start. Then you have 10 seconds or less to ask God for forgiveness. So much blood everywhere. Hard to clean, especially from a boat. That was in that letter. And there is another death threat, Susan Hendricks, to Mississippi law enforcement saying, don't go outside. What happened with that?
Yeah, Cincinnati, Ohio woman calling 2 officials out of Mississippi several times, more than 25 times. Here is her mugshot. And you're right. Don't go outside, saying there's a bomb. So the threats are they're taking them seriously, as they should, and 2 arrests so far.
That's right. A woman now accused of bomb threats to government offices related to the Nolan Wells investigation. This is an Ohio woman facing federal charges. Michelle Francine Edwards, just charged in the U.S. District Court, Southern District, Mississippi. 1 count, transmitting threatening communications to interstate commerce. Okay. Nobody can do their job appropriately when they're under a death threat. That's against Mississippi law enforcement. Trust me, there are people within law enforcement that are trying to do the right thing. Threats on one of the young men's mothers. That's not all. Teslin Figaro, Nolan's family, has gotten threats too.
Absolutely. And, I don't condone violence on anybody, but I do want to put some context behind this, Nancy, as well. I was a police officer in the Air Force. You're talking about government officials, meaning I'm sure the judge has received threats. I'm sure the police officer has received threats, although they should not happen. But these are individuals that have taken, just like you and I, have taken on, positions that it comes with the territory. You have received death threats. I have received death threats. So the people that's not being talked about that's receiving the death threats is Nolan Wells' mother and father. Why is nobody talking about the death threats with them? They've reported it. Why isn't anybody arresting the people who are actually harassing the victims? It's online. It's available for people to see. So I just find it very interesting that there's so much sympathy for a police officer who not only do they receive death threats, they put their life on the line. They signed up and raised their hand to say, hey, pick me for the death threats and pick me to give my very life, as I did in the Air Force. So it is not right what is happening, but we also have to shine a light on the actual victims, the actual people who are grieving the loss of their son, and nobody gives a damn about the death threats that they're receiving.
I want to be very clear, Ms. Figaro. You say nobody cares. That's not true. I care. I care. I care about the death threats on Nolan's mother and his family and his team. I also care about death threats on one of these boys' mother and on law enforcement. And yes, my first death threat, oh my goodness, came back in the 80s. But guess what? They faxed it to me from the Fulton County Jail. So that wasn't much of a mystery. But with every time you take a position, you make people angry. The thing is, if these threats, including the ones on Nolan's mother, the mother, you know what I'm doing all night long till 2 o'clock, Miss Figaro? I'm packing my children to go away to college. That's what Nolan's mother should be doing tonight. She should be getting him ready to go back to school. Instead, she's visiting his remains. And now, death threats. We want justice in this case. We don't want secret grand jury proceedings. We don't want secret medical examiner reports. We want all threats investigated. We want the truth behind that audio. I want to know. And I want everybody on that boat polygraphed. We want answers. If you know, or you think you know anything about this case, dial 228-769-3063. Tonight, we honor Canine Echo, protected while serving the Sartell PD, Minnesota, because a group called Vested Interest in Canines created a bullet and stab-proof protected vest and protected Echo. These things aren't standard. They're over $1,000 each. And I've seen many canines die on crime scenes. Protect those canines who protect us. We remember an American hero, Officer Brian Huff, Detroit PD, shot in the line of duty after 12 years, leaving behind his wife, Melissa, and their son, Blair. American hero, Officer Brian Huff. Thank you to our guests for being with us tonight, but especially to you for joining us in our search for the truth. However it may pan out, if it brings down the courthouse walls, so be it. We want the truth about Nolan Wells. Nancy Grace signing off. I'll see you tomorrow night, and until then, good night, friend.